Come closer, sweetheart. Let me tell you something most folks don't realize until it's too late. Your grandmother never had a guidebook for life. No apps, no experts, no shortcuts. And yet, she built a home, held a family together, and carried a quiet strength that people today are still trying to figure out. The question is, what did she know that we forgot?
Well, now come sit a little closer, sugar. These old bones don't move as quick, but the stories still do. I remember standing in that narrow grocery aisle sometime around 1962, clutching an envelope with just enough cash to feed 5 miles and still keep the lights on. No calculators, no apps, just a pencil nub and a mind that had learned the hard way not to make mistakes twice. Tuesday's supper was already decided by Sunday afternoon, and if I strayed from that plan, well, something else would have to give. We didn't call it discipline back then. It was just life. And Lord, the things we kept to ourselves. Folks today, they talk about everything, but in my house, there were lines you didn't cross. Not out of fear, no, but out of respect. A family's troubles weren't for passing around like a plate at supper. You carried them careful, like fine china. Speaking of supper, Sundays. Oh, Sundays was sacred. That table wasn't just for eating. It was where we stitched ourselves back together after a long week. Didn't matter if you were mad, tired, or stubborn as a mule. You sat down, and somewhere between the gravy and the second helping of potatoes, things softened. I kept my house the same way I kept my family, little by little, every day. A swept floor, an empty sink, a made bed before the sun had fully stretched. Not because anyone told me to, but because it meant something to stand in a place that reflected care. And I wrote letters, real ones, ink on paper, thoughts you couldn't erase with a tap. When you take the time to write, you feel what you're saying, and the person reading it feels it too. Now, if someone came to me upset, I never started with questions. No, ma'am. First thing I'd say was, sit down. Let me fix you something warm. You'd be surprised how much easier the truth comes after a good meal. And tucked away, oh yes, I always kept a little something for myself. Not out of secrecy, but out of knowing. When you've seen the ground fall out from under people, you learn to build quiet safety nets. Every morning I dressed like the day mattered, because it did, even if no one else saw me but the mirror. And people, well, I forgave them, had to, but I never forgot. There's a difference, you see. One keeps your heart light, the other keeps you wise. I never sat anyone down to explain these things. Didn't need to. You were always watching. The way I folded towels, stirred the pot, sealed an envelope. That's how we taught back then. Not with words, but with living. And if you listen close enough, even now, you might still hear it in the quiet moments when you do something a certain way and don't quite know why.
Like when your hands fold a towel just so, edges lined up neat as Sunday best, and you pause for a second, wondering who taught you that. That was me, honey, or someone like me. I used to wake before the sun, not because I wanted to, but because the day didn't wait on anyone. Coffee on the stove, that soft percolating sound filling the kitchen before a single word was spoken. Those quiet minutes, they were mine. No noise, no needs, just a woman and her thoughts, gathering herself before giving the rest away. You see, back then, we didn't talk about balance. We just balanced, some days better than others. There were nights I sat at that same kitchen table long after everyone had gone to bed, a single lamp on, bills spread out like a puzzle I had to solve, moving numbers around, deciding what could wait and what couldn't, and somehow it always worked out. Not perfectly, but enough. And when it didn't, well, that's where faith came in. Not always the church kind, though I had plenty of that too. I mean the quiet kind, the kind that whispers, "Keep going," when there's no good reason to believe things will get easier. Neighbors would come by, unannounced as the weather, and I'd put the kettle on without thinking twice. Didn't matter if I was tired or busy. You make room. That's what we did. A house wasn't just walls and furniture. It was a place people could land when life got too heavy. I remember one winter, pipes froze, money was tight, and your grandfather had that look in his eyes he tried to hide from the children. So I smiled bigger, cooked what we had, and made it feel like enough. Sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just steady. And all the while you children played in the next room, thinking the world was safe and warm. That was the goal. Not perfection, just a soft place for you to grow. I never told you how many times I was unsure, how many mornings I stood at that sink staring out the window, wondering if I was getting any of it right. But I kept moving anyway. Because that's the thing, sweetheart. You don't always know you're building something strong while you're in the middle of it. You're just doing the next right thing over and over until one day you look around and realize the children aren't children anymore. The house gets quieter in a way that sneaks up on you. No slammed doors, no laughter spilling down the hallway, no little feet running where they shouldn't. Just the clock ticking steady on the wall, same as it always did. Only now you can hear it. I remember the first Sunday dinner after they all moved out. I still set the table out of habit, good plates, folded napkins, everything in its place. Then I stood there a long while, looking at those empty chairs, each one holding a memory. I almost put it all away, but I didn't. I sat down anyway, served myself like it mattered, because it did. You don't stop being who you are just because the room changes. And wouldn't you know it, little by little, they came back. Not all at once. One would visit, then another, bringing their own stories, their own worries, their own ways of doing things that made me smile and shake my head all at once. I never corrected much. Times had changed, and they needed to find their own rhythm. But every now and then I'd see it, the way one of them planned a meal ahead of time, or kept a tidy kitchen without thinking, or wrote a note instead of sending a quick message. That's when I knew. The lessons had settled in quiet, just like they were meant to. Now, I won't pretend I understood the world they were stepping into. Everything moved faster, louder, with more choices than I ever had. But I also saw something familiar underneath it all. The same need for home, for steadiness, for someone to say, "Sit down, you look tired." That never changes. Some evenings I'd sit out on the porch as the light faded, watching the sky turn that soft shade between blue and night. No rush, no noise, just time doing what it's always done. And I'd think about all those years, all those small, ordinary days that didn't feel important at the time, how they stacked up, one on top of the other, building a life so quietly you almost miss it happening. That's the secret no one tells you. It's not the big moments that hold everything together. It's the way you show up when nothing special is happening at all. Now let me ask you something, sweetheart, because I know I'm not the only one who's lived a life like this. Did your house have a sound to it growing up? Not noise exactly, but a feeling you could hear if you stood still long enough.
Maybe it was the hum of a refrigerator late at night, or a screen door creaking open on a summer evening somewhere out in the United States. Maybe it was your mama in the kitchen or your grandmother humming low while she worked. Tell me, did you have a Sunday like that? A table that meant something, or did life move a little faster by the time it got to you? I wonder sometimes how it felt on your side of things. Did you notice the small rules while they were happening, or only later, like most of us do? Did you roll your eyes when someone told you to clean up, to sit down, to write a thank you note, and then catch yourself years later doing the very same thing? It's funny how that works. And what about now? When you walk into your own kitchen, whatever it looks like, do you feel in charge of it or just passing through? Do you plan your meals, or do you stand there at the end of a long day, tired, wondering what's easy? No judgment now, just curiosity. Because every generation carries things forward in its own way. Maybe you don't use envelopes for groceries, but maybe you watch your spending in ways I never had to think about. Maybe you don't write letters, but you reach people faster than I ever could. Still, I can't help but wonder if there are moments when you slow down, when you choose something on purpose instead of convenience, when you set the table, even if it's just for yourself, and make the day feel a little more intentional. Do you ever do that? And when life gets heavy, and it will, it always does, do you have a place or a person where things soften a little? Someone who says, sit down before they say anything else? I hope you do, because all those little things I've been telling you about, they weren't really rules, not the way folks think of rules now. They were just ways of holding life steady when it tried to shake loose. And I'm curious, truly, what are your ways? What have you kept, and what have you let go? Because somewhere between how I lived and how you live now, there's a thread connecting it all, thin but strong, stretching across time and kitchens and front porches. And if you follow it gently, you might just find yourself standing in a quiet moment, doing something small, something ordinary, and realizing it matters more than you ever thought. More than you ever thought it would. More than anyone ever told you. I think that's what surprises people the most, that meaning doesn't arrive with a grand announcement. It slips in quietly, like evening light through a kitchen window, catching the edge of a clean counter or a cup left out to dry. There were so many days I thought were ordinary, just another meal, another load of laundry, another bill to pay, another small kindness no one noticed. I used to wonder in those moments if any of it would last, if any of it would matter once the day was done. But it does. Oh, it does. Not all at once, not in ways you can measure. It settles into people. It becomes the way they move through their own lives, the choices they don't even realize they're making because something in them learned it long ago. I can still see your grandfather coming in through that back door, hanging his coat the same way every evening, like the day had a proper ending. And I'd be there, stirring something on the stove, pretending I hadn't been listening for his footsteps. We had our hard times, more than I ever let on, words we shouldn't have said, silences that lasted longer than they should have. But we always came back to the table. Always. That was our way of saying, we're still here. And you learn over the years that staying is its own kind of strength. Not staying in pain, no, but staying present, staying willing, staying open enough to try again the next morning, even when yesterday didn't go the way you hoped. I think about that a lot now, sitting here with more yesterdays than tomorrows. The world you live in, it pulls at you from every direction. So many voices telling you what matters, how to live, what to fix, what to chase. It can get so loud you forget to listen to the quieter things, the ones that don't shout but somehow hold more truth.
like the way a home feels when it's been cared for, or the way a simple meal can mend something words can't quite reach, or the way showing up again and again builds something you can stand on when everything else feels uncertain. You don't have to do it the way I did. Lord knows my way wasn't perfect. But there's something in the rhythm of it, something steady, something grounding. And if you're very still, just for a moment, you might feel it too. Right there in the middle of your own life as it's happening, not later, not someday, but now, while your hands are busy and your mind is wandering just a little. That quiet sense that what you're doing, however small it seems, is part of something being built piece by piece, day by day. Something that will outlast the moment, outlast the worry, outlast even you, and carry on in ways you may never fully see, but will always, somehow, be there. And that's when you understand it. Not all at once, but gentle and sure, like a hand resting on your shoulder. Life was never about getting everything right. Oh no, if that were the case, none of us would have made it through a single season. It was about tending to what was in front of you, feeding people, keeping a few things in order, holding your tongue when it mattered, and speaking up when it counted even more. All those little rules I lived by, they weren't rules at all. They were anchors. Because the truth is, the world will always change, faster than you like, slower than you need, and never with your permission. You can't control that, but you can choose how you meet it. You can choose to be careful with your money, even when it's tight. You can choose to protect your peace instead of handing it out to everyone who asks. You can choose to gather people around a table, even if it's small and simple. You can choose to care for your space, your words, your presence in the world. And maybe most important of all, you can choose to show up every day. Not perfectly, just honestly. Because that's what builds a life, not the big moments folks like to talk about, but the quiet ones they forget to notice. So here's what I hope you carry with you, wherever you are, whoever you become. Take care of what takes care of you. Keep something for yourself, even if no one else understands why. Be kind, but don't be foolish. Forgive, but remember. And when things get hard, and they will, put the kettle on, sit down, and start again. That's the whole secret if there ever was one. Not a grand philosophy, just a steady way of living. And if you do that long enough, with enough care, one day someone will look at the way you move through your life and think, they never explained it, but somehow they taught me everything. Now before you go, honey, let this old woman ask you one more thing. Where are you listening from? Which little corner of this big world, or maybe somewhere out in the United States, feels like home to you? I always loved knowing where folks were, imagining the kitchens, the porches, the lives behind every story. And if this reminded you of someone, your grandmama, your mama, or maybe just a feeling you can't quite name, go on and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. These kinds of stories, they're meant to travel. Give it a like if it's settled something in your heart, even just a little. And stay a while. Subscribe, as you young folks say, so you don't miss the next time I sit down and tell you another piece of the past. There's always more to remember and more to pass along.